Margaret Turner sat by her window on a rainy morning in Brighton. She watched the gray clouds move across the sky while holding a cup of cold tea. Her small flat felt big and empty these days. She could hear neighbors talking in the hallway, but never spoke to them herself. 2 years ago, her husband Peter died. Now she lived alone. Her daughter Emma called once a month from London, but their talks were short. "I'm fine, dear," Margaret always said, even when she wasn't. Every day was the same. She woke up at 7. She made toast for breakfast. She put on her brown coat and walked to the post office. She hoped for letters, but her mailbox was always empty. David worked at the post office. He was young with red hair and kind eyes. He noticed Margaret coming every day. "Nothing today, Mrs. Turner," he would say softly. "Maybe tomorrow will bring something nice." Margaret would nod and leave. She would walk past the market, past the cafe where people laughed together, past the park where children played. She went home to her quiet flat. One wet Tuesday morning, Margaret's shoes were worn out. The soles had holes. She walked on the slippery pavement near the market. Her foot slipped. She fell hard on her side. Her shopping bag flew open. Apples rolled into the street. "Oh my," Margaret gasped. Pain shot through her hip. She tried to stand, but her leg wouldn't work right. People walked by without looking. The rain fell harder. "Are you hurt? Let me help you," a voice said nearby. A woman about 60 years old bent down next to Margaret. She had gray hair like Margaret's. She wore a blue raincoat. Her face showed worry and kindness. "I'm Dorothy," the woman said. "Can you move your leg?" "I think so," Margaret said. She felt embarrassed lying on the ground. Dorothy helped Margaret sit up slowly. She picked up the fallen apples and put them back in the bag. Then she helped Margaret stand. Margaret winced from the pain. "You live nearby?" Dorothy asked. "Just around the corner," Margaret pointed with a shaking hand. "I'll walk with you. We must get you out of this rain." Dorothy held Margaret's arm as they walked. Margaret felt strange letting someone help her. She hadn't been this close to another person since Peter died. At Margaret's building, Dorothy said, "I'll help you upstairs." No. You've done enough," Margaret said quickly. "Please." "I want to make sure you're safe," Dorothy said. They climbed the stairs slowly. Margaret's flat was on the second floor. When they reached the door, Margaret felt awkward. The flat was messy. She hadn't cleaned in weeks. "Thank you," Margaret said. "I'll be fine now." "Would you like me to make you some tea?" Dorothy asked. "You're quite wet from the rain." Margaret hesitated. She looked at Dorothy's kind eyes. For a moment, she remembered having friends over for tea. That was before Peter got sick, before everything changed. "I suppose 1 cup would be nice," Margaret said quietly. Inside the flat, Dorothy hung up their wet coats. She filled the kettle with water. Margaret sat at the small kitchen table and watched. It felt good having someone move around the flat. It wasn't so quiet anymore. "My husband Robert died 6 months ago," Dorothy said while waiting for the water to boil. "Heart attack. Quick and quiet." "I'm sorry," Margaret said. "Thank you." "I know how lonely it gets," Dorothy said. She found mugs in the cupboard. "I see an older lady living in every flat. We pass each other in the hallways but never talk. Funny how we can be so close and so far away." The kettle whistled. Dorothy made 2 cups of tea. She added milk and sugar without asking. She sat down across from Margaret. "I moved to Brighton after Robert died," Dorothy continued. "My children thought a smaller place would be easier. They don't know how hard it is to start again at our age." Margaret nodded. She understood completely. She looked at Dorothy's face and saw her own feelings reflected there. The sadness, the loss, but also something else. A small spark of hope. They drank their tea and talked about simple things. The weather, the new grocery store, the neighbors. It had been months since Margaret had a real conversation. When Dorothy finally got up to leave, she said, "Perhaps we could have tea again sometime?" Margaret felt something warm in her chest. A tiny light in the darkness. I would like that very much. Dorothy smiled. Tomorrow? Same time? Yes, Margaret said. Tomorrow. After Dorothy left, Margaret sat in her quiet flat. But the quiet felt different now. It felt less empty. Like a door had opened just a little bit. She washed the teacups. She looked around her flat and noticed the dust on the shelves. Tomorrow, she would clean. Tomorrow, Dorothy would come for tea. For the first time in many months, Margaret smiled as she went to bed. Maybe tomorrow would bring something nice after all. The next day, Margaret cleaned her flat early in the morning. She dusted the shelves and swept the floor. She put fresh flowers from the market in a vase on the table. When Dorothy knocked at 3 o'clock, everything looked perfect. It smells lovely in here, Dorothy said as she entered. Is that lavender? Tea I smell? Yes, I remembered you might like it, Margaret said shyly. They settled at the kitchen table. This time, talking felt easier. Dorothy told funny stories about her neighbors in London. Margaret shared memories of Peter painting the living room all by himself. He got more paint on his clothes than on the walls, Margaret laughed. It was the first time she had laughed about Peter in months. When the tea was finished, Dorothy said, I have an idea. There's a small cafe by the seaside. Would you like to go together tomorrow? Margaret felt nervous. She hadn't been to a cafe since Peter died. People might stare at the old lady sitting alone with her friend. I understand if you're not ready, Dorothy said quickly. We can stay here if you prefer. No, Margaret said. She took a deep breath. I would like to go. The next day was sunny. They walked to the cafe together. The sea air smelled fresh and salty. Margaret felt good walking next to someone. People nodded at them as they passed. The cafe was small with white tables and blue chairs. Pictures of boats hung on the walls. They ordered scones with jam and cream. Margaret watched Dorothy butter her scone and chat with the young waitress. Your scones look lovely, Dorothy said to the waitress. My mom makes them fresh every morning. The waitress smiled. Would you like anything else? We're fine, thank you, Margaret said. She felt proud of herself for speaking up. As they ate, Margaret noticed another woman sitting alone at a nearby table. The woman kept looking at them, then down at her book. She seemed lonely. That lady over there, Margaret whispered to Dorothy. She's been alone the whole time. Dorothy looked over. Maybe we should ask her to join us. Oh, I don't know. Margaret felt uncertain. She might want to be alone. Let's just smile and see what happens, Dorothy suggested. They caught the woman's eye and smiled. The woman smiled back hesitantly. Dorothy waved her over. The woman packed up her book and walked to their table. I'm sorry to bother you, the woman said. You both seem so happy talking together. Please join us, Dorothy said. I'm Dorothy, and this is Margaret. I'm Alice, the woman said. She sat down carefully. They talked for another hour. Alice told them her children lived in Australia. She hadn't seen them in 2 years. They wrote emails, but it wasn't the same. I write letters to them, Alice said. Real paper letters with stamps, but they always reply by email. Letters are special, Margaret agreed. You can touch them and keep them. When they left the cafe, all 3 women felt lighter. They made plans to meet again next week, this time at Margaret's flat. That evening, Margaret called Emma. For once, she had something to talk about. I met 2 new friends, Margaret told her daughter. Dorothy and Alice. We met at a cafe today. That's wonderful, Mum, Emma said. She sounded surprised. I'm so glad you're getting out. Yes, Margaret said. It's nice to have company again. Over the next few days, Margaret and Dorothy met every afternoon. Sometimes Alice joined them. They took short walks by the sea. They visited the library together. They even went to the market on Saturday. At the market, Margaret helped Dorothy choose fresh vegetables. Dorothy helped Margaret pick out new shoes to replace her worn-out ones. Your feet will be happier now, Dorothy said as Margaret paid for sturdy black shoes. Thank you for helping me choose, Margaret said. Peter always helped me with shopping. That's what friends do, Dorothy said simply. 1 week later, they sat together in Margaret's living room. Afternoon sun came through the window. They had tea and biscuits. I was thinking, Dorothy said slowly, maybe we could invite other people to join us. I know an older man who shops at my building. He always shops alone. That sounds nice, Margaret said. There must be many lonely people in Brighton. Alice nodded. My neighbor is a widower named John. He's very quiet but seems kind. They talked about starting a regular group, maybe every Thursday afternoon. They could meet at different places. Take turns having tea at each other's homes. We could call it the Thursday Friends, Alice suggested. Or the Brighton Circle, Dorothy added. The Tea and Tales group, Margaret said with a smile. They all liked that name best. Tea and Tales. Every Thursday at 3 o'clock. That night, Margaret wrote in her old diary for the first time in years. She wrote about Dorothy and Alice, about the cafe and their plans. She wrote, "New friends can come when you least expect them, like flowers growing in unexpected places." She went to sleep happy. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. The first Thursday of Tea and Tales arrived. Margaret set up her living room with extra chairs borrowed from neighbors. She baked biscuits using Peter's grandmother's recipe. The flat smelled of butter and sugar. At 3 o'clock, Dorothy came first. She brought John from her building. He was tall with silver hair and gentle eyes. He carried a bouquet of flowers. "I'm sorry I don't have anything else to bring," John said shyly. "Flowers are perfect," Margaret said. She found a vase and arranged them carefully. Alice arrived next with her neighbor. He was named Thomas. He walked with a cane and wore thick glasses. "Thomas used to be a teacher," Alice explained. "I taught history for 40 years, Thomas said. "It's nice to make new friends after retirement." Soon 4 more people came. Mary and David, who had been married 60 years. Patrick from the flat above Margaret. And Sarah, who worked at the library. The small flat was full but not crowded. It felt cozy and warm. Everyone helped make tea. They shared a big plate of biscuits. Soon the room filled with talking and laughing. "I haven't been to a tea party since my wife died," John told Margaret. "I forgot how nice it feels to talk with people." "Me too," Margaret said. "It's been too long." David, the young postmaster, stopped by during his afternoon break. "I heard happy voices," he said at the door. "Is this the famous tea group?" "Come in, David," Dorothy called. "We always need young people to keep us on our toes." David sat with them for 20 minutes. He told funny stories about delivering mail. Once he delivered a letter to the wrong house. The lady there baked him cookies to say thank you anyway. After David left, Thomas suggested they share stories from their lives. Each person told a memory. Mary talked about dancing with her husband in their kitchen. Patrick shared memories from working at the Brighton Pier. When it was Alice's turn, she became quiet. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm not good at telling stories." "Please try," Sarah encouraged. "We all want to hear." Alice took a deep breath. "When I was young, we were very poor, 12 children in our family. One winter, we had no coal for heat. My father walked 20 miles to find work. He came back with money and presents for everyone. I still have the doll he gave me." "Where is the doll now?" Margaret asked. "In Australia with my daughter. She plays with it with her children." Everyone was touched by Alice's story. It felt special to share such private memories. The tea party lasted until sunset. Before leaving, they planned next Thursday at Alice's house. Mary offered to bring homemade cake. Patrick said he would bring playing cards. "Next time we can play games too," he said excitedly. After everyone left, Margaret cleaned up the flat. She felt tired but happy. The quiet didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt peaceful. The next morning, David stopped her at the post office. "I have something for you," he said with a smile. He handed her a letter. "It's from Emma?" Margaret asked, surprised. "No, look at the return address." Margaret looked carefully. The letter was from Thomas. She opened it quickly. "Dear Margaret," it read. "Thank you for hosting Tea and Tales. I had forgotten how good it feels to belong somewhere. I hope we can share more stories next Thursday. Your friend, Thomas." Margaret, smiled all the way home. She put the letter on her mantel next to Peter's photograph. That Thursday at Alice's house, the group grew larger. Alice had invited 2 more people. Robert, who lived downstairs, and Elizabeth from the church. They played cards after tea. The men taught the women how to play bridge. The women taught the men how to play rummy. Everyone laughed when they made mistakes. "I haven't played cards since my husband died," Elizabeth said. "I was afraid I forgot how." "We all make mistakes," John said kindly. "That's part of the fun." Later, Dorothy had an idea. "We should do something for the community. Give. Back to Brighton." "Like what?" Sarah asked. "Well," Dorothy thought. "John makes beautiful birdhouses. Margaret knits blankets. Thomas knows so much history. We all have skills to share." They talked about starting a craft sale to help the local food bank, or teaching their skills to young people, or visiting elderly people who couldn't leave home. "I could cook meals," Mary offered. "I could drive people to appointments," Patrick added. Margaret felt her heart grow warm. 2 months ago, she was alone and sad. Now she had friends who cared. They wanted to help others too. "We're not just having tea," she said quietly. "We're building something bigger." Everyone agreed. Tea and Tales was more than weekly meetings. It was a family that kept growing. That night, Margaret wrote another letter to Emma. She told her about the group, about their plans to help Brighton. She included a photograph Thomas took at the tea party. "I'm still your mother," she wrote. "But now I'm someone's friend too. Maybe someone's helper. Maybe part of something important." She stamped the letter carefully and smiled. Tomorrow she would post it. Tomorrow she would start something new. The Tea and Tales group started their first community project on a bright spring morning. They met at the church hall, where Sarah helped them get permission to hold a craft fair. Tables lined up against the walls. Each member brought something to sell. John's wooden birdhouses sat on the first table. He had painted them bright colors: blue like the sea, yellow like sunshine, green like summer trees. Every birdhouse had a tiny door and roof. "I never thought my hobby could help others," John said as he arranged the birdhouses. "I just enjoyed making them in my garage." Margaret placed her knitted blankets on the next table. She had made 10 in different patterns. Some were soft pink, others were warm blue. Each one took her a week to finish. "These blankets will keep someone warm this winter," Alice said, touching the soft wool. People from Brighton started coming early in the morning. Mothers with young children, young couples looking at the birdhouses, even some tourists from London. David came during his lunch break. He bought a blanket for his grandmother. "She'll love this," he told Margaret. "Her arthritis makes her cold all the time." The group worked together all day. Mary and Elizabeth minded the baking table. They sold pies and cookies. Patrick helped. People carry their purchases to their cars. Thomas counted the money carefully. Dorothy ran from table to table. She talked to customers. She helped wrap gifts. Her energy made everyone smile. "How did you all become friends?" one customer asked. "Dorothy, life brought us together," Dorothy answered simply. "We all needed something we found in each other." By 3 o'clock they were tired but happy. They had sold almost everything. John had 1 birdhouse left. Margaret had 3 blankets. Then something surprising happened. A woman with a newspaper arrived. She took pictures with her camera. She asked questions about the group. "I'm Lucy from the Brighton Herald," she explained. "Someone told me about your story, about how you all met. May I write about your group?" The members looked at each other nervously. They weren't used to attention. "We just want to help people," Margaret said quietly. "That's exactly why people should know about you," Lucy said kindly. They talked with Lucy for an hour. She learned about their friendship, about the craft fair for the food bank, about their plans to visit lonely elderly people. The next week, the newspaper story came out. The headline read, "Brighton Silver Circle Spreads Joy." There was a big photograph of them all at the craft fair. Margaret bought 5 copies. She cut out the article and mailed one to Emma in London. Emma called that evening, excited. "Mom, you're famous," Emma said. The whole office saw the paper. Everyone thinks your group is wonderful. We're just ordinary people, Margaret said, trying to help. But that's not ordinary, Mum. That's special. After the newspaper story, the group grew even larger. New people came to Thursday meetings. William, who fixed broken furniture, Helen, who taught piano, George, who wrote poetry. The church let them use the hall every Thursday. The vicar, Father Michael, sometimes joined for tea. He asked if they could help with the food pantry. Many elderly people are too proud to ask for help, Father Michael explained. But if friends bring food, they might accept. The group started food baskets. Every month they packed bags with milk, bread, and vegetables. They delivered them together. Sometimes they stayed for tea. Sometimes they just left the baskets by the door. Mr. Parker was their first delivery. He lived alone in a small cottage. His mailbox was falling off the wall. John fixed it while the others visited. I don't need charity, Mr. Parker said gruffly when they arrived. This isn't charity, Margaret said gently. This is what neighbors do. They didn't push. They left. The basket. They talked about the weather, about his garden, about his late wife's roses. Before they left, Mr. Parker asked, "Will you come again next month?" Of course, Dorothy promised. As they walked away, everyone felt proud. They were making a difference. One person at a time. That summer, Emma came to visit for 2 weeks. She brought her 2 children, Sophie and James. They were 7 and 9 years old. Grandma's friends want to meet you, Margaret told them. The children loved the Tea and Tales group. Sophie helped serve biscuits. James learned to play cards with Patrick. They asked to come every Thursday. Can we stay longer? Sophie asked on their last day. I like it here with all your friends. Emma looked at Margaret with surprise. She saw how happy her mother was, how the children loved the group. She noticed how everyone called Margaret by name, how they needed her for more than just tea. Maybe we can move back to Brighton, Emma said suddenly. The children could change schools. We could live close by. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? I'm sure, Emma said. Family is important. And you've built something beautiful here. That night, Margaret wrote in her diary again. Friends became family. Family found friends. The circle grows wider. Still, she fell asleep wondering how one rainy morning could lead to so much joy. 6 months later, Emma moved back to Brighton with her children. They rented a house 2 streets away from Margaret's flat. For the first time in years, Margaret woke up, knowing her family was nearby. Sophie and James became regular visitors to Tea and Tales. The group welcomed them warmly. Patrick taught James chess. George read his poetry to Sophie. The children brought energy and laughter to every meeting. I make the best paper airplanes, James announced one Thursday. Soon everyone was folding paper. Even Thomas, with his shaky hands, made a plane that flew across the room. The community work continued growing too. They started teaching skills at the community center. John ran woodworking classes. Margaret led knitting circles. Dorothy taught basic cooking. David, the postmaster, had been watching their success. One day, he surprised them with news. The mayor wants to meet your group, he said at the post office. She's heard about your community work. Mayor Williams visited the next Thursday. She was young with short dark hair and an easy smile. She brought a photographer with her. Your group has done something special, the mayor said. You've connected people. You've helped the community. The town council wants to recognize your efforts. 2 weeks later, the group gathered at the town hall. The mayor gave each member a certificate of appreciation. The certificates had their names written in fancy script. For outstanding community service, the mayor read aloud. The Tea and Tales group. After the ceremony, there was a small party. Sandwiches and cake, lemonade and tea. The whole community was invited. Mr. Parker came walking carefully with his cane. He shook everyone's hand. Thank you for not giving up on me, he told Margaret quietly. More surprises followed that evening. Father Michael made an announcement. The church board has agreed to help Tea and Tales expand. We're setting up a new community space with a kitchen and meeting rooms. The group will have a permanent home. Everyone cheered. Alice and Dorothy hugged each other. John wiped his eyes with his handkerchief. That summer was the happiest time Margaret had known in years. Each day brought something good. The new community center opened in September. It had large windows that let in sunlight, a kitchen where they could cook together, a garden where John planted flowers. On opening day, people from all over Brighton came to see the center. News crews arrived to film the celebration. Children ran in the garden. Adults toured the new rooms. Emma watched her mother move through the crowd. Margaret knew everyone's name. She introduced people to each other. She made shy visitors feel welcome. "I never thought I'd see Mum like this," Emma told David. 3 years ago, she barely left her flat. "People just needed to find each other," David said. "Your mother helped make that happen." The center became the heart of Tea and Tales. They still met every Thursday. Now they also had morning craft sessions, evening cooking classes, weekend gardening groups. Young families joined older members. Students came to learn skills. The lonely found friendship. The sad found hope. Margaret started writing letters again. This time she wrote to people across England. Other towns wanted to know about starting their own Tea and Tales groups. "Dear Mrs. Anderson," one letter began. "Thank you for asking about our group. Remember that friendship starts small, one person reaching out to another, one cup of tea shared. From there, it grows naturally." On the first anniversary of the community center, the group planned a big celebration. They invited everyone who had ever come to a meeting. They prepared games and music. They hung photographs showing their journey. Emma helped hang the pictures. There was the newspaper clipping from their first craft fair, photos from the mayor's visit, pictures of the center being built. "Look at this one," Sophie said, pointing to an early photograph. It showed Margaret, Dorothy, and Alice at their first meeting. They sat in Margaret's kitchen holding teacups and smiling shyly. "Grandma looks different now," James observed. It was true. In the old photo, Margaret looked uncertain and alone. In recent pictures, she stood tall and confident. Her eyes sparkled, with purpose. The celebration was a wonderful success. Over 100 people attended. They shared stories about how Tea and Tales had changed their lives. Patrick told how the group gave him courage to perform his magic tricks again. Sarah shared how meeting friends helped her through cancer treatment. Robert explained how learning to cook made him healthier. As the sun set, everyone gathered for tea one last time that day. They sat in circles on the lawn. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and warm cake. "Let's remember why we started," Margaret said. "We were all alone in our own ways. Then we found each other. Found family," Dorothy added. "Found purpose," John said. "Found joy." Alice smiled. Emma sat nearby with her children. She watched her mother surrounded by friends who had become family. She thought about that rainy day when her mother fell, how one moment of kindness had changed everything. The group continued long into the evening, telling stories, making plans, sharing dreams. That night, Margaret wrote her final page in the diary she had started years ago. She wrote, "Every ending is a new beginning. In friendship, we discover who we truly are. In community, we find our purpose. In love, we build our legacy." She closed the diary and placed it on her shelf. Tomorrow would bring new adventures with her Tea and Tales family. Tomorrow would bring more chances to help others. Tomorrow would be another day of hope. The circle was complete, yet still growing. In Brighton, the Tea and Tales group had proven that simple kindness can change lives. One cup of tea, one shared story, one open heart at a time. And somewhere in the town, another lonely person would soon find courage to join them. The cycle of friendship would continue, bringing light to more lives, one Thursday at a time.